see everyone there. A great time was had, and I look forward to kind of pulling all of these nuggets of wisdom out of y'all's heads and sharing those with folks who weren't able to come. I kind of want to open it up after that to talk a little bit about community just in general. There was a lot of talk about community at the conference and the community of game audio at GDC. There was also some murmurings about, hey, what is happening up there in Seattle? What are you all doing? Because we're hearing about it and it sounds pretty cool. So I'd really like to get some insight from folks who have been out to this meetup before and try to understand things that we might be doing well, things that we could be doing better, and just kind of, you know, have a discussion about what community means here in Seattle for us. So, with that, some housekeeping things. The Yahoo group, the Google group, email, it comes to everyone's inbox. Seems to be working. You all made it. Congratulations, thanks. Is there anything else I should be talking about? PopCap, represent. Thanks for letting us have the space. All kinds of fluids over there. Guy Whitmore. Came to him on Monday morning and I was like, oh, we need to have this conversation and we need to have it right now. And he's just like, do it. Yes. That's my job. Yeah. So cheers to PopCap and Guy for enabling this.
Lucas selfie stick?
Luca.
Yeah. Thank my mom for this one. She'll be really happy that I'm using it. Amy had asked me to do that Periscope thing again because apparently I'm the only one who can download iPhone apps. So here we are.
This might not be a table, but we are in a circle. I appreciate you for freestyling this. I'm going to sit down, but I'm really interested to hear from anyone who's interested in sharing something about the conference, takeaways, or like biggest thing coming out of GDC. Who's got some?
Okay.
Yeah.
Binaural audio, and there was a great presentation on that for a kid's title, wherein he was talking about how he had implemented it in Logic, and instead of different frequencies to have different heights and different, and then applying different filters depending on whether things were behind you or ahead of you. And I don't really know much about this, but perhaps you people in the room might be able to talk more intelligently about this. I just got sort of the idea of how a filter works with our own ear lanes and how we perceive things high and low as far as elevation. So it was just an hour presentation. I'd kind of like to sort of catch up and unpack that.
So was he using the Oculus plugin, or like
I was using the plugin in Logic.
Logic has a binaural?
Apparently in 10.2 it does.
Oh.
Yeah.
Built-in or is third party?
He showed a window that looked very Logic. As far as how it was inputted. Like it didn't look like it was third party to me, but yeah.
They weren't doing the head tracking. It was just single, like sourced audio that they would play, or was there like movement when you moved your head around and the audio changed?
He said that the audio wouldn't change, but the sound effects did. And the sound did change, but the music wanted to be pretty much front and center. But then how he was striating it high and low elevation wise for the recording.
So I mean,
if I understood it correctly,
whether it's a VST tool in a DAW or whether it's a spatialization plugin in middleware for a audio tool, it's like binaural is back in the spotlight. I feel like for a long time. I mean, hands up, who's done the haircut headphone YouTube? Yeah, okay, right.
I did it at Disney World in 1984.
Right. So I mean, binaural is kind of it's an old trick in a lot of ways, but it has never really made it into game audio or middleware proper.
I worked on an album that was recorded with the binaural head in the late 90s, something like that. it was very frustrating for us because we felt like it was a parlor trick, and they've been doing the binaural thing with the scissors around the head for so long, and anyway. So if they're doing it better now, that would be awesome.
Well, and that's all done with a recording technique, right? Like they're actually got a physical model of a head.
Yep.
You've got the mics in where the ears would be.
Yep.
But what they're doing now is all a digital. They're doing it by filtering the sound in a specific way and delaying the sound the way that it would be delayed as it comes around the sides of your head. So it's a totally different technique.
Right.
That's depending on the size and the shape of your own head can or cannot be successful.
Yeah, so we're going to be laser scanning our heads anytime
That's
soon.
what I was going to say, because that's always been the drawback is everybody's head and ears are different.
Yeah, you're going to hear something different than I am.
So maybe if we get our head scanned and make that part of the game data, it will be better.
We are gonna be seeing that actually. We are going to be seeing like calibrations, kind of like Rock Band, but you're going to be seeing like using your camera and using stuff on your console or on your PC to configure the shape of your head. There's actually software out there apparently to do custom HRTF. So I bet. I mean, you're going to have to see that if you really want things to be accurate.
Yep.
And those
There's
headphones.
at least one hardware developer, Smith Research, which sells their headphones are intended for or their headphone system is intended for doing a 3D audio physical modeling of a recording studio or multi-channel setup, so that you can have your headphones on and head track and your speakers are always there. But it comes with a pair of earbuds that you put in. They're actual little microphones, and will do an HRTF of your ears of that particular person. So that's at a more high level or professional prosumer user level. But once it gets accepted there, that's just it's just a rapid slide down until.
Did you see the OSIC? So they had this headphone at the expo right next to the Y booth called the OSIC headphone. And of course, it's GDC 2016, so they advertise it as like, 3D VR headphone. But actually, what it really does is it has some way of like calibrating your actual ear patterns somehow, and from that, it actually sounds like. I mean, they had what was it, like Dark Side of the Moon or something? And you sat there, and even with all the noise of the convention, it really sounded like here's this guitar amp there, there's a drum set there, and, everything was positioned accurately. So if you moved around, it would move. It would like stay.
You could change your perspective, like look at the guitar. And
Exactly, like you could look at that, and then it would stay there. But what I loved about it was it actually sounded right. It actually sounded legitimately like I was actually. It didn't sound like I have great speakers. It sounded like I was actually in the recording studio with the musicians. With all their gear. I'm sorry?
Where do I sign up?
Kickstarter. It's like $300 too. It's just for the.
The OSICs is the name of them?
OSIC is right now, the way they're doing it is that the mix that you're listening to affects the way it sounds. So if you listen to a stereo mix, they can basically only do a stereo mix. So it sounds like all your instrumentation is on one side or the other. It'll still sound spatial, but the money mix is a 5.1 mix, and so you can get some spatialization. If you listen to Atmos stuff, you could literally have,
Or why limit it?
Exactly, yeah.
Why not have a full multi-track where that's pointillistically placed? In headphones, it doesn't have to be 5.1 or whatever. It could just be multi-track.
Wherever.
Right?
There's an idea for a company.
Right. Let's go.
Well, and that's the great thing about that the Smith Research headphone system that I was talking about. It's actually used by re-recording mixers on stage, on re-recording stages. They are mixing their films in headphones and taking them off to double check the speakers. They're using to do remixes for their sound effect stems in Dolby Atmos, and it's like wow. I mean, they're sitting there in your not hundreds, but like multi-million-dollar studio listening on headphones. And you take it off and like, okay, headphones back on. And then we take it into the final dub stage after that.
And I guess the reason why they do that is because Atmos is just an arbitrary number of channels, so the headphones are actually a better.
They have better resolution.
That's crazy.
Right. So is the Atmos able to project sound in different directions you can fit a headphone? And can you hear, or is it all within the filtering to create that Atmos?
You might know better.
Mastering sound.
I know what I've been told, so I
There's like a headphone, like Atmos headphone or something.
Oh wow.
I think that does kind of the simulation of the Atmos effect.
Because it's a standard.
Yeah, but it's simulating like virtual speakers that you turn around versus doing a filter, like a binaural filter, and using the HRT is actually to determine where like the frequencies are coming from. It's actually like creating virtual speakers around and the Atmos version. So it's a little different.
Got it. Yeah.
It's 3D based more than channel based.
Yeah. So the headphones has its own accelerometer that's going to tell you what position.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the big takeaway is that, you know, sound is in the spotlight right now because people realize in order for VR to work, sound is all of a sudden really important.
As of yesterday.
The paradigm kind of changes when people who are not on team audio realize that. Right? Now you have disciplines outside of audio who are coming to audio folks and they want to engage in this conversation about how to use audio in order to support whatever it is they're doing. And I guess so this is the first year at GDC where they had a track for VR. And they had, 2 days worth of VR talks lined up. And my big takeaway was everyone in VR right now is an expert. Been working in it for 2 years. But also they're very humble and open about sharing their experiences. Very willing to say that they don't know and that they want to hear more from the frontiers of this technology. And I think that in a way kind of shifts the paradigm from where some game development has been behind closed doors with NDAs, blocking progress through proprietariness. And so to have that conversation kind of opened up on day one, so to speak, seems like we could be having a lot more, an accelerated ramp up towards leveraging this technology. Who could say?
Yeah. Basically, I saw a handful of talks on the VRDC track on Monday. I just went to them because I had nothing else to do. And the common thread that was there really seems to be this one of relentless experimentation. And for me, it's kind of exciting because even if this generation of VR somehow still, craters on impact and we don't get it this time around, I feel like everybody who's done these demos can see that it will be a thing someday. And everybody's being really gingered with it this time around because it's like, well, we know we have this thing, there's this kernel of really awesome stuff here that we can get to, this sense of presence. You glimpse it in doing these demos, and we totally are very self-aware as game developers that the stuff we're making right now for it is kind of more or less schlock. It's going to be the stuff that's available off the bat, but because there's always that gold rush to be in the App Store immediately. But it's I feel like games have now been around long enough as a medium, and the practices that are used to make them are being shared openly enough that everybody's look, let's not screw this up. No need to have everybody kind of work in closed doors. We can talk about it. We know that we've got a thing here. We know what we don't know, and let's all just kind of keep digging on it, because it would be a real disservice for everybody to keep things close to their chests and deliver it subpar experience after another and spoil the idea of this thing ever kind of going wide, And even if we screw it up, Facebook's got so much money in it, TV and film producers have all their money in it. I mean, it's going to happen one way or another, but I don't know. I really like the sort of openness and the optimism that seems to be around it. It would be really easy to just be yeah, it's the thing of this year, but I don't know. I feel like people are betting long on it, and it doesn't feel like a big, just unsubstantiated hype machine to me.
It's funny, looking at last year, there were a bunch of VR talks, and they were all very much the same, we're still figuring it out, but there were also the rules. Oh, it's got to be all mono point source emitters. It's got to be all joint based. no non-diegetic music. And this year you see like everybody's trying music and they're all finding like, no, music works. It's just, you just have to use it kind of judiciously. And so there's already kind of this learning experience of like, yeah, these things are working. These things we didn't think could work, but we're actually making them work, and here's how. You know, it's a learning experience, but it's cool that it's not just like, this is it, and we're done. These are the rules that we must abide by.
And what's really interesting too is that all the talk right now seems to be around like a lot of the tech that's coming up for VR. And man, once we can get it so people don't feel sick, man, once we can get it so these 3D spatialized images are just bang on accurate every time, it's kind of like, well, then what next? You know, there was the talk in the cinematic audio from Two Big Years the other day. They made an interesting point, which is like, it's an interesting question of what we do once we get all the tech there, because it's not like at some point, once 5.1 was established as a format and 5.1 capture systems were invented, you could just go out, grab something in 5.1, bring it back, and just put it into the mix and be like, well, because all that is totally positionally solid, we're done here. Like, that wouldn't be something you would do. So why is this race to like, oh man, I can't wait to see who wins the plug-in war of, ambisonics decoding. Yeah. I mean, it's like, who really cares? I mean, we'll get to a point where, cool, we can put a sound anywhere we want, and then it's like, but then what? Like, that doesn't actually solve the problem of telling stories. It's just like, cool, that tool works, so, and I don't know. So I like that some of the discussions are already even starting to acknowledge, like, look, we're still discussing getting the building blocks there, but that's just step one, right?
It reminds me, you were talking about non-diegetic music and diegetic music. I'm reading a book called History of Film Music by Mervyn Cook, and reading it is just like, I was not there in the 1930s, obviously. Well, not obviously. I was. But it feels like deja vu if I was born again, because the technology that these people went through for audio, both before sound, when they were performing in the theaters, as well as afterwards. Because at first it was like all diegetic music when the talkies came, because that's where you could do it, and they wanted to make a thing of it. And non-diegetic music creeps in, and it still kind of goes back and forth. So we'll be reinventing and inventing it forever. Have you guys ever hear about this thing called animated sound in film?
No.
So back when film was done on optical thing, in other words, it's literally light differences that make your audio. And they figured out that they could literally draw on the optical soundtrack to make synthesizer type noises before synthesizers were really invented. So on creepy films, they would literally draw on their optical stock to make animated sound, and some of them got so good they could write little melodies and stuff with it. So there's where we are now.
Kind of sweet sound hack, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Just taking the technology, bending it a little bit.
That's right.
Making it do the things.
And I think another example of the technology leap we're going through now, from stereo or even surround to
Roundtable, right? I think that's kind of the point, right? Is that any one of us could maybe have a thing or two, but that we're all just kicking it here, having this conversation is pretty cool, right? I like it. It's one of the reasons why I go to GDC. I did not go to any talks this year. I selfishly crowdsourced this conference. Every morning from 7 to 9 a.m. Yeah, that early. We would round up for coffee and have this kind of chat, right? We would talk about what went on the day before. We would talk about what we were excited to see in the upcoming day, and in a way, it allowed me to scrape the cream off the top of the conference. And what was even more satisfying was, creating that space, having that space for people to share their experiences, but also seeing how that helped set people's ship off in the right direction with the right mentality, I think, if I'm not overstating it maybe. And I guess that's what I come back to here, and that's that, through this exchange that we're having, I feel like what happens next is we all burst out from this point off in our own directions. And my hope is that through this discussion, we all are kind of equipped to now take on these challenges when they come up, right? Either through learning through other people's experiences or whatever kind of chain reaction these kind of things set off. And so I guess, I don't know. On that topic, Ariel Gross wrote a great article this week, post-GDC kind of inspiration, which outlined a hierarchy of creative needs that was very interesting. And anyway, dig for it, it's out there. But at the top of that, the top of the pyramid really is this idea of, giving back and sharing your wisdom and kind of completing the circle of, from passion, work, and inspiration back down through, attempting to lift people up who are trying to find their way through that as well. And I guess I want to bring it up because I think this community embodies that for me in a lot of ways. And it's been really interesting. I came to town a couple of years ago, and maybe a year before that, I started putting a flag on the moon for some drinks. And a lot of you showed up, and I'm thankful for that, to where we are here today. And I guess I'm interested to open it up to people who have been coming a long time, to those of you who are just making it for the first time. What is it in a community that you're looking for? What about a community is a reason to show up, or has been a reason to show up?
I mean, one of my favorite things this year, and I think it was this year more than years before. I mean, you always kind of like go to GDC, but like you go to these kind of like outside of your city things or whatever, and of course you have the people that you work with that you recognize, but also like, I mean, there were a ton of people here who were at GDC, and it was really cool to like be talking to somebody that neither of us knew, nobody knew or whatever, and they're like, oh, how do you two know each other? And it's just like, oh, we just meet up pretty much once a month, and we've been doing that now for long enough that I actually know this person like kind of well, and that's super cool. Like, just nothing else except we just once a month show up at the same place and talk about stuff. That's I mean, I don't know, simple things.
Yeah, that was a comment I got all the time from people that work from Seattle. It was like, the Seattle scene, you guys are crazy. You're all like just a big hug fest over there. It's like, hell yeah, we are.
Yeah, it was awesome.
This group is literally how I got into the industry. It was, I think, within weeks of signing up for the Yahoo group that Brad put out a feeler for, hey, want to do a crappy 4-week animation rigging gig at Sucker Punch? Hell yes. Check that worked on a game box off. And it turned into greater things than that. But it was like, for me, I think I keep coming back because this will continue to be that for other people too. This is where you need to start. It isn't practical to show up at ArenaNet's lobby and be like, hey, can I go leave my resume? Can I go? And like, that doesn't really work. But like, if you come, they've been trained. We learned that they've been trained to deal with people. So, but this works. Like, come here again and again and again, and then you're not a stranger anymore. We know you, and then when an opportunity comes along, we'll say, hey, you should call this person. I'll vouch for that person. Like that's a great way to get into the industry. So I think there are so few entry-level jobs available that I'm glad that this exists to be someplace where people who want to get in can come.
With that being said,
to ride on that, I might not have gotten work through this group, but it kind of kept me sane as I attempted to get work. So I probably started coming to this about a year ago. And prior to that, I attended a PAX Dev where I met these two gentlemen here, and they said, hey, come to this great meeting. And it was at that moment that I realized this community is just amazing. Just it's really supportive, and came one time and you just had a thrill, just inspired me to keep pursuing at it. And then, it's been probably about a year and a half since that, finally landed the first gig. So just, comfort to keep going for it, and just guys supporting you and just keeping you inspired.
Yeah, I think a lot of what I got out of GDC and all the audio talks was just kind of reaffirming things that I've been doing on my own that other people that were professionals were doing consistently. It's where, like, if I'm a freelancer and I'm in my hole all day, like, hearing that other people do the same things and kind of go the same avenues, like, I feel like I'm on the right track, and that, like, okay, I can keep doing what I'm doing and that'll work out, which is, like, really comforting.
Well, that's a great thing for me is, we're not all ArenaNet. We don't all have big teams. And so to be able to, like, just have this kind of social thing that we get to do every month or whatever, where we all speak a common language and can bounce ideas off each other and just kind of share that creativity that is inside each one of us is just endlessly inspiring.
I have a friend of mine who is a programmer in the gaming industry. He said to me at one point, I was talking about implementing some audio thing, and he goes, well, it's not like it's really rocket science or anything. And I stopped and thought about it, and we all know how technical it can be. From the ground up, the implementation of a sound, or anywhere from the concept up to the final implementation, or composing a piece of music and making it, implementing it in the game we want, the way we want it. And I responded to him, it kind of is rocket science, actually. There's a lot to it. There's so many moving parts, and it's really difficult. Piggybacking on what Brad just said, the common language part of it. A lot of us don't work in, like, I don't work at Sucker Punch for the team, whatever. I work independently, or contract-wise. And it's what she was saying. We're sitting in our studios a lot of the time by ourselves, and it gets kind of lonely in there at times. We all go through the same stuff. So meeting up with a group like this, discussing our common issues, common practices, or even common technical challenges, or even just commonalities about you tried this new plug, you tried this new program, or whatever. That is awesome to be able to talk to you guys about this stuff, because none of my other friends get it. They just don't understand. Unless you live in this world, you don't get this world, and it's a cool world to be in. So I'm glad to share it with all of you guys. Yeah.
And it's not just like it's not all about the common things that we share together. I also work independently, and I hear all of your stories about working in your studios and what kind of just kind of daily interactions happen with all the departments and stuff. And that sheds a lot of light on what kind of goes on inside those walls, and it's really interesting to hear.
Just from a practicality standpoint, talking to a lot of friends this last week from LA or San Francisco, and being from Southern California, I think that logistically it's just about proximity, how close we are, and it's like from down there, it's like, yeah, we're not going to sit on the freeway to go do this thing. So it's just not as easy to get together.
Bay Area is not like this either. I mean, I just moved up in January from there, and and part of my experience is I generally freelance. So when you guys are talking about interacting, I'm thinking about the last time I had to decipher what someone wanted from an email list of revisions, saying that it wasn't squishy enough or whatever. But that being said, it's been great so far. I've already been to a couple of these things, and the sense of community is really outstanding.
So I would ask the question, were you aware of the Bay Area Game Audio meetup?
Not until I got here.
And so this is one of the things that I think any community kind of grapples with, because there is a loose contingent in the San Francisco Bay Area who does meet up on a regular basis.
Right.
But it's the megaphone giving the shout out and bringing people into it, right? And I know because
truthfully, I could have gone to some of those and I didn't. And when I came up here, I had to start connecting with people.
Well, at one of the roundtables, unsurprisingly, 2 folks from the Bay Area were like, listen, I'm jazzed for this community thing. I want to do something. And I was like, well, do you know about what's already happening in your own town? And the shocking answer was no. And I think that is something that I wish I had a secret for people. Because how do you communicate that outside of a, I don't want to say insular community, but outside of a small community, how do you get that message out? Because even in one of the town halls, I met 2 folks from Seattle who had never heard of this, right? And I think that, we're all advocates. We're all out there doing what we can for game audio every day, right? Seattle, represent.
12 sound designer represent.
Yeah. But I guess, I don't even know how this works. So, how does this work? It works because there was a mailing list when I hit town and I just pressed send, and from there it started getting bigger, right?
I think it's worth pointing out too that mailing list has been around for a long time. I mean, it was already years old when I moved here 8.5 years ago.
Yep.
So it's not like this community just flashed into existence.
No.
I mean, I met Alistair at a Game Audio meetup now 7.5 years ago or 8 years ago. It's been around for a while. It's been a slow burning, slow chewing thing, but it's turned into this thing in the last several years. Damien's the secret, where it is just sort of existing and living on its own. I just wanted to point that out.
Okay, well, I'm going to refute that and say y'all are the secret, right? Because,
like you said it yourself, Damien. Someone has to do it, and every month you
that's
get an
it.
email from Sandy. Everybody's meeting here.
At our last Seattle Composers Alliance board meeting, and Ron Jones was there, and he mentioned the concept of like you've got to have a czar. There's got to be somebody who just owns the thing and does it, and I think that's true to a great extent. Like it's just about having somebody who is like I think these things can kind of sit there for a while and it's like, well, is it really? Is it? Am I the one who says where we're going to meet up this month? And it's like if somebody just goes like, yep, here's where we're going this month. Cool. All right, that's where we're going. Like you were saying before, you just need somebody to step up and do that, and then of course everybody has to buy into that too. They have to say, yeah, that's you're right. You're the one who gets to say that. And I think we were all kind of like, I think we wanted to be meeting up, and we just were looking for somebody to sort of say where to go, right?
I mean, you see that with like what Andy's done in Bellevue with lunches on Friday,
lunches, right, yeah.
And now. You're the king of Bellevue lunches.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but that's the exact point. Is somebody just has to say, hey, we're doing this. This is the date. This is the time. Be there. And it's a community now.
Yep.
People want to hang out with each other. If you throw out an event, people are going to show up because we like each other.
Yeah, dude, this isn't game audio. This is like if you've ever tried to figure out where you're going to go to dinner with 5 friends in a text message. It's just like nobody really wants to throw down and say like, okay, this place at 8, and then everyone will be like, great. But until that happens, I mean, you could the entire night, and then someone bails, and then you know what, it's late now, and I just ate a thing. I mean, I don't know how many of you guys have read that, the tipping point, like the pop science-y Malcolm Gladwell book that was really popular probably like 10 years ago now. But, there's this common phenomenon of basically like the more people are sort of there and can divide responsibility for a thing amongst themselves, the less likely it basically is that anybody is going to act. If 20 people witness an accident, maybe nobody calls the police because you presume everybody else is probably going to do it. And it does really take a certain special person. I mean, hopefully Damien would be on the phone immediately in this case, But it does, you want to say everybody can do it, you can start your community, but like, it really does take a person who's just willing to go to bat and just kind of declaratively say, and with something like this, almost regardless of the level of experience, just like, I see a need for this, and I'm gonna say the thing is there, and maybe the first time like one person comes, but you just kind of need to keep doing it. I mean, you're the guy who brought this together, and you're claiming not to know how it happened, so that doesn't bode super well. But
well, it was here before me, and
it
you are
was
right. It is putting the flag on the moon. It is the consistency of it happening. When you say it's going to happen.
Yeah.
The other thing that I find compelling about this group, compared to other things that I've been to, is that it's a group of genuine people who actually want to contribute to each other. Because I've been to a lot of things where it's like a very political, you know, I'm trying to make myself look smarter than everyone else. I'm trying to make myself, you know, look cooler than everyone else. And it's all about me looking better than the people in the group, rather than me trying to give something or, you know, get something from the community. And what I've found in the vast majority of my, if not all of my interactions with people in this group is people who are genuinely coming together to try to give things to each other, contribute to each other, and build something together, rather than what you see in a lot of places, which is just people tooting their own horn and trying to make themselves sound cool.
I think that's an important distinction, right? Like, you say meetup, right? And everybody assumes networking, right? Like, that's the key word everybody, you know, and I've said it to a couple of people who don't come or haven't come. They're like, oh, yeah, I mean, I don't really like going to those networking things or whatever. And it's really not. I mean, like, we say community a lot right here, and it's very social. I mean, I love the fact that people aren't showing up with resumes and, like, handing them out. It's kind of not what it's about. And as far as like what we can do now, I mean, because luckily we kind of have a good head start in this, but as far as like improving it and getting more people interested in coming, it's kind of emphasizing that it's not a networking thing, right? Like, nobody's here to like show off or, you know, try to get a job. I mean, jobs do kind of come out of it, but that's not like the number one priority. But the main thing is just like being social and having a community and not making it a networking thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're probably going to bring up the same thing.
Well, probably, yeah.
See it at the same time.
Right, on three.
I'll say it first then. I want to spring off of what RJ said about networking and meetups. I'm really curious what some of the non-audio specific meetups are like here. Like, I know you go to the West Side meetup or the Beer Wednesday meetup.
Oh, the
Beer Wednesday meetup.
The East Side one is good too.
There are a whole
bunch
bunch of meetups going on in Seattle for this industry. There's the East Side meetup, the West Side meetup, Beer Wednesdays. There's the indie dev thing. There's something that goes on in West Seattle that I promised to go to, but I keep forgetting because it's really far away from me. I'd like to know if anyone else goes to those, and are those networking events, or are they like this? Are they generally people coming together because they want to get to know one another?
The successful ones are not the ones where people show up and say like, hey, so here's my card. I think one of the things that plays to the strength of this group is actually the fact that, I mean, when you look around, and I asked the question, who here is working in-house versus contract, there's a lot of diversity. There's people who are starting their careers, there's people who've been around basically forever, there's people who are in-house, there's people who are contractors. And I think that's what makes it so healthy. You know, when you compare this to, and I don't mean to like rag on the Bay Area or whatever, but when you go to the Bay Area meetups, there's really only one of them that I found like a place where I could just talk freely and you know, be safe or whatever. And that was like the game dev drink up one or whatever. And the reason why was because in that one, it was an almost even match of people who are working at like the Sledgehammers, the LucasArts, the whatever.
The ones that Dren was putting on? Or?
I couldn't tell you. It was a while ago. But it was the one that's run by, what's his face, who always wears a suit from Sledgehammer, whose name I should remember, but I don't. But the point is that it was a nice blend of people who were like, you know, established, you know, they're in an in-house situation, and people who were maybe starting their careers who wanted to like learn from them and all that kind of thing. And it wasn't really networking at all. It was just like, hey, you know, we all do the same thing. Let's hang out.
There was a conference at GDC that I was not able to attend, but had a really funny title called "Everyone at this conference is a phony, is a fraud." And did anyone go to that?
Yeah,
I went to the. He did the same talk at GameStown Con.
Okay, so how does that relate to everything we've been talking about? I have a feeling they're kind of connected.
It was a little different because it was focusing on understanding your own personal insecurities. That you may feel like you're barely holding on to what you can do by a string. Like Brad hears me say this all the time. Like I have no idea what I'm doing.
Neither do I.
Yeah, exactly. But I know you have no idea what you're doing, so it's fine. No, and really that's what Stephen's talk was about. As much as you think that you are unsure about what you're doing, that you don't think that you know what you're doing, everyone else is in the same position, and it's about utilizing that understanding that you're not an expert, but you're engaged and you're interested to your own to figuring out how to be a better you, how to be a better whatever it is that you're doing. So it wasn't necessarily about networking.
But I think what we're talking about now is kind of the cure for that stuff, just talking to people.
Exactly.
Just to bring it back to a structural thinking, because I think he's one of the only two people still watching right now. Gord from Vancouver is here, and they have put together. So everybody say hi, Gord. We also have one or two other random people that joined and said, "WTF is this?" So just browsing the random Periscope feeds. Yeah. Well, hi to them too. But Vancouver has put together a really good scene as well. Gord and Matt have been sharing the crap out of that thing, and talking about some of the East Side meetups and the other things that exist. I feel like what maybe makes this one so successful, and ditto Vancouver, is that there's an agenda, and not in a very forced I have to show up and do this thing agenda, but when you put an agenda there, it's going to be a talk on this, or it's going to be a roundtable on this. You want to talk about a safe space where folks from, we're working at AAA, we're working here. If you sort of put it out there, look, this is swap your business cards around and drink night because so-and-so is sponsoring it, that sets the agenda of, if I don't want to deal with that, I'm not going to go to that. If I go to that, I can feel okay about being that guy because that's what this is there for. If we say it's a talk given by somebody, I can sort of go expecting to learn, and that's going to be the focus. And I know I probably don't want to be super needy, getting started, pass all my stuff out guy. I mean, sometimes it really helps to just kind of clarify, and it can be really light too. I mean, they do talks up in Vancouver, but the talks are to the extent of when they were down here, when Gord and Matt came down for Bungie in November, they basically just asked, hey, we don't have anything figured out for December, we need a speaker, do you want to go speak? And it was just right then, I just, put it together in a rando week, but it was hey, here's an agenda. We threw something. It's better than nothing. When you show up, you sort of know what you're going to get. And if your expectations are dashed, well, maybe you didn't read the brief, basically. But that, I think, probably is a good way to try to get the community rolling to an extent. Don't leave it too open-ended, or else it's like when I go to any other meetup.com meetup, and I've tried half a dozen other groups. None of them tend to stick for me because I don't really know what I'm supposed to do there. At the East Side meetups, I generally just end up talking to people I know most of the time because I'm sort of not sure, am I supposed to be looking for jobs? Am I supposed to just, and I get a bit clueless about it, whereas it feels like when I come to one of these, I know what I'm getting into, right? And that takes a lot of the pressure off of how am I going to interact?
So I'm going to close it out, and that's perfect because I guess on that, if anyone is interested in doing an informal stand-up, they want to talk at one of these, just, ping me. I'm ring leader for this right now. Czar, I think. And I guess, when I first started coming to Seattle, it was all about the casual social, and that was great. That was great for me because working as a freelancer for years, I needed it, right? And what we've been trying to do this last year is do a little bit of alternating with casual, informal, commiserate, cry and hug, and this more educational style, right? And to me, that is part of growing this community. Part of growing the community is sharing knowledge, and there's so many folks here who have knowledge to share that it's kind of silly. It's just I'm spoiled with it. but it's really important not just to, hear from the developers who are doing the big things, but also to hear from those of you who are doing things that are just as amazing on a smaller scale. So I'm hoping to cultivate more space for that kind of thing, so please let me know if you're interested in stuff like that. And with that, we should leave soon. There's a bar across the street. We need to put back the chairs, and I wanted to say thank you. Thanks.